welcome Schulich leaders and our keynote speaker today, David Saint-Jacques. My name is David Goodman. I'm the Executive Director of Schulich Leader Scholarships. And what an exciting session we have planned. But first, I'd like to take a moment before we dive into this session to recognize and congratulate all of the incoming 2021 Schulich leaders. So if we can give a big round of virtual claps, we're so excited for you to join the Schulich Leader Network. You've really achieved something truly incredible to not only be nominated by your high school or your SAGEP, but to go on to be selected by one of our 20 university partners to earn this coveted award. You should be very proud of this career milestone. And so now you're amongst the top Canadian student innovators from coast to coast, all pursuing a career that is founded in the STEM disciplines, making up our network of almost 600 Canadian Schulich leaders since 2012. And you'll find yourself right at home within the SL network. So we encourage you to take advantage of monthly opportunities like these. A lot more virtual these days, but there will be back in person in due course. And definitely connect with your university captains who will help guide you and introduce you to your fellow Schulich leaders at your university, and throughout the summer and leading into the fall when you begin undergraduate study. A short housekeeping note, we do apologize for the delay to access the website directory, and we'll notify you when that's fixed very soon so that you can populate that information and meet other Schulich leaders. No, we're always striving to connect Schulich leaders with others in whether it's the SL network, our alumni network, university, industry, or in today's case, the galaxy. So that being said, I'll pass the hosting privileges over to a fellow aerospace professional and Schulich Leader graduate, Curtin Dunhu, a 2014 scholar of the University of Alberta and now a junior MTS mechanical engineer at MDA, who will moderate this keynote session with David. So thank you, Curtin, and please count down for liftoff. Introduce David.
Sure, thank you, David. Also, I'd like to spend a couple seconds congratulating, for my behalf, all the new incoming Schulich leaders. It's kind of crazy to think, 2014, but I'm just so excited for all of you to join this amazing network. But of course, our guest of honor today is Dr. David Saint-Jacques. So we'd like to thank you very much, yourself and the Canadian Space Agency, for allowing you the time to present to us today, which I'm sure will be a very amazing and awesome and eye-opening session. I'm excited for it, even on a personal, as a space enthusiast and as a professional, of course, working at MDA. It's just so exciting to be here. So thank you very much. Of course, we all know Dr. Saint-Jacques to be an astronaut with the Canadian Space Agency, but more than that, he's also a biomedical engineer, an astrophysicist, and a doctor. And prior to joining the Canadian Space Agency and the astronaut program, has done some medical work in the Canadian Arctic. Also did some studies in astrophysics all over the world, including in Japan and Hawaii, as well as home in Canada and Montreal, and has also worked as a biomedical engineer in France. And of course, is the most recent Canadian astronaut to have flight experience. So was part of an expedition between 2018 and 2019 to the International Space Station, fourth Canadian astronaut to conduct a spacewalk. And what personally I didn't know and warms my MDA heart, the first CSA astronaut to use the Canadarm2 to catch a visiting spacecraft, which is super cool. So welcome, Dr. Saint-Jacques. It's a pleasure to have you. Just a note for everybody kind of listening in and watching, our plan is the presentation from Dr. Saint-Jacques will be about 15-20 minutes, and then at the end we'll have 20 minutes for Q&A. What will happen is we'll let Dr. Saint-Jacques finish, and then afterwards when we open it to Q&A, please just use the raise hand functionality on your Zoom controls. I'll try to keep track of sequencing as best I can. And then what I'll do is I'll unmute you. You'll be able to ask your question and we'll go from there. And so just so it'll help me, please keep your hands up until I get to you. That'll just make sure we get to everybody as we can. And we'll try to finish up between 12:45 and 1, depending on how many questions, how the discussion goes. So yeah, well, without further ado, please welcome, I'll hand it over to Dr. David Saint-Jacques, and yeah, excited.
Thank you, Curtin. Thank you, David. You know you're in good hands when an event is managed by a no kidding rocket scientist. Thank you. So looking forward to no bugs at all. And if we have, we'll call you and we'll figure them out. So thanks for the introduction. It's a real honor to be talking to the future of Canada, and I mean this. I think you know, the brains of our youth are our best resource, and our future is in your heads. So I'll try today to share a few of the conclusions, a few thoughts that this old man has gathered along the way, and maybe we can have an interesting discussion. So Houston, first challenge, I'm going to try to share my screen. Let me know how that goes. You see this? See a presentation? Yes, you do. Okay.
Yes.
Let's go. All right. So just a few thoughts and perspective of gathered along the way. As a rural physician turned astronaut, so before joining the space program, I was working as a family physician in the Canadian Arctic, in Nunavik, actually, in northern Quebec. Beautiful, rugged country. Some of you might have had a chance to visit. It is really just so beautiful and completely foreign. It's like traveling without traveling. But what was most amazing about it, of course, was the intercultural experience of working with Inuit colleagues and Inuit patients. And I had to, of course, adapt. The whole point here is to adapt so you can serve better. And this insight came, of course, very handy when I did become an astronaut in the end. The other thing that I learned working up there is, very small, close-knit teams. It's incredibly intense teamwork between the bush pilots, the super nurses, the few physicians, the Inuit first responders, all the hospital staff. It's kind of all in your hands. So it is a good place for a responsibility junkie like me. And that also came useful in space because when there's nobody to pass the puck to, well, you're on your own and you discover resources and you discover capacity that maybe you didn't think you had just because you have to rely on yourself. So, but that is not actually how I became an astronaut. That's not how I started. In reality, this is how I started. This is how we all start as a child full of dreams and full of hopes for the future. And all right, back. Did I lose a photo? What happened here? The one thing led to another, and eventually I did join the space program. Talk about that later in the Q&A, and I had to train and retrain. Nobody studies to be an astronaut. It's every astronaut, it's their second, third, or fourth career. And eventually, through this international team, got my badge, if you want, enough to fly to space. And I got the chance to fly on a Soyuz rocket, the venerable Soyuz, very similar descendant to the rocket that Gagarin flew on his first mission away from home. I spent 7 months on board the International Space Station. The International Space Station, of course, is a fantastic laboratory orbiting the Earth. We do research there on us, on our planet. And I think that goes almost without saying, this incredible feat of engineering. But I think there's more to the station than just doing research. Space station was also built by many countries. It was built by a concert of nations. And if you look at those flags, you'll notice Russia, the US, Japan, Germany, various European nations, Canada. You don't have to look far back in the past. And these countries were actually waging wars, throwing bombs at each other. Space has this incredible capacity to bind us. And it is a daily demonstration that, although it's difficult, we can work together. We demonstrate it practically every day in space. So that's, I think, another legacy of space exploration, is that it forces us to work together just because it's impossible to do it alone. But maybe an even more important legacy of the space program is, here's this incredible machine keeping a couple of crew members alive in the deadly vacuum of space, and it is an incredible feat of engineering. But what's behind space station is Earth. And that perspective of our position in the cosmos is also, I think, maybe the biggest legacy of the space program. This is an incredible photo. This is an actual photo taken by Voyager spacecraft as it was leaving the plane of the solar system. And with a high magnification lens, they could take a photo of both the Earth and the Moon. This is the human condition. You can talk about that in philosophical terms, but as a scientist, I like to talk about the human condition in practical terms. This is the human condition. We are so exposed. It is such an incredible miracle of half chance that we are alive in the otherwise deadly vacuum of space. And I think that perspective we owe to space exploration and the wisdom that comes with it. So went to space and did all these cool things that astronauts do. I used Canadarm, our beautiful robotic arm, the robotic arm that was actually used to build space station, a very Canadian thing. All the pieces were built by different countries, hurtled into space at 8 kilometers per second, and then caught by Canadarm and carefully assembled on orbit over the course of 10 years. So Canada built the space station, I like to say. So we use it also to capture these free-flying cargo resupply vehicles. So that was quite a nice badge of honor, and it was cool to be speaking only with Canadian flight controllers for that part of the mission. The other cool thing that all astronauts dream of doing is a spacewalk. And so I had the chance to don a spacesuit and become for a little while my own independent satellite of our planet, and to look at our planet, to look at space just through your visor. You kind of forget that it is so well made, this equipment. You kind of forget all the technological aspect of it. And I think that's what engineering and civilization is all about, really. We millions of us think hard over thousands of years to improve the human condition so that we can do things that were once impossible. And here I find myself completely comfortable preparing the roof of my home, basically, in space, in this completely deadly, forbidden environment, just thanks to the common ingenuity, imagination, and desire to work together of the whole humanity over generations. So it was actually a very endearing moment when I realized that the human mind is there. The human mind has left the solar system with some deep space probes. We're not tiny, we're huge. Click. The other thing we do, of course, on board space station is research, a lot of research on many fields, many disciplines. But one of the most important parts of medical research we do is medical research on ourselves. We are the guinea pigs of a lot of the research that we do in space. And that's especially the forte of Canada. And the reason why we do so much research on ourselves is that going to space is cool and it's fun to float around and look at the Earth, but it's actually very bad for you. It's just plainly very bad for you. It's, to summarize it, it's akin to a form of accelerated aging. There isn't a system in your organism that isn't negatively affected by the spaceflight environment, be it from radiation, so that's kind of a lottery with cancer, your blood system, your brain, your heart, your lungs, your vessels, your muscles, your bones, everything kind of degenerates. So we put a lot of effort into trying to help the astronauts stay healthy, and there's good reason for that. First, because we want to come back home and be able to walk. My personal agenda was I want to come back home be able to carry my daughter on my shoulders. So I needed to stay strong and fit to be able to do that and remember how to walk. The other reason, though, is that a lot of the maladies that affect astronauts resemble real disease on Earth, except that in space they happen very quickly in otherwise very healthy individuals. And so it was like the perfect guinea pigs for medical research. And so maybe you've heard of osteoporosis that might affect, maybe you have a grandparent that's got osteoporosis, weak bones from aging. Astronauts develop osteoporosis just the same. It was super fast. Already after half an hour in the microgravity, if you measure, you can see by measuring, if you take a sample of your urine, that you're peeing out your bones, literally. And so you got to do something about it if you don't want to end up with a bad fracture. The other reason why we do so much research in space is that you can't call a doctor, you can't call a nurse, you can't call an ambulance. So astronauts have to be very self-reliant and autonomous with their healthcare. And so that actually is something, there's a lot of appetite for that on the Earth too. Anybody that lives in a small rural area, anybody that actually, or an elderly person that's so sick that it's difficult for them to even go to the clinic, we all want, more centralized, more personalized, or less centralized, more personalized healthcare. And so the excuse of the extreme environment of space is like a little trigger to force us to think of ways to do it. So by helping astronauts take care of themselves, we're helping everybody take care of themselves. Kind of the excuse of spaceflight. Another aspect beyond the physical ailments you can imagine is the psychological perspective of an astronaut. This is the beautiful cupola of space station. Here I am looking back at my home where all the people I love are. And we've all experienced during this pandemic the feeling of confinement and isolation. And for an astronaut, it's like, at a pretty high level. And you need a lot of psychological resources and help among each other to make it through. And I think we've learned a lot about what does it actually take to keep a human happy and functional with the help of spaceflight. And then that incredible trip ends up and you have to come back to Earth. Coming back to Earth, by the way, is not a small affair. You're basically falling from the sky at very high rate of speed. And here's a photo of a space shuttle, actually, in this case. That shooting star that you see, that's the blazing trail of a spacecraft burning upon re-entry. It's going so fast that the friction of the atmosphere, just ignites it. They're well made. They're not the barbecue for astronauts who survive, but it is a really fiery experience. And you just cross your fingers that by the time the friction has slowed you down enough, the parachutes will open and you'll be home safe. And having put all energy to adapt to space, and I was at the top of my shape at the end of the mission, feeling on top of the world, literally, in terms of health and mental health. And then the return to gravity, that just crushed me, absolutely crushed me. And I had to be, I'm sitting in a chair here, my friends are carrying me around in the steppes of Kazakhstan, because there's just no way I could have walked, impossible. I would have just fallen, no sense, completely lost sense of balance. I was fainting all the time. I was very nauseous. It's quite humbling how you forget to be an Earthling. And then you're really interesting. For a couple of weeks, you're really interesting for scientists while you still have the effects of spaceflight, apparently. And then eventually you become a normal Earthling, and then you're not interesting anymore. Then you can take a holiday. So I spoke a lot about space station. It's about 400 kilometers above the Earth. And from it, we learn a lot about ourselves, about our planet, about living and working together. But our dreams are set further out. We want to go back to the moon. The moon is about 1,000 times further away than space station. So it's as if in space station, we had practice camping in our backyard. And now we're ready to, no kidding, go to the mountains with our camping gear, but because we know it's fun, it's going to work. But while you're on space station, you could come back in an emergency, or we always get spare parts or resupplies. You're really like in your backyard. You can come home, go to the toilet, get a spare part. On the moon, no way. You need to plan everything. It's really like going on a more serious camping trip, or maybe if you're the analogy of sailing, it's like sailing on a lake, never really far from shore. Could come back. It's annoying, but it's possible. We will go back. Canada has joined the Concert of Nations. They want to build a space station around the moon, the Gateway. Our contribution will be another robotic arm, Canadarm3. This one will be equipped with artificial intelligence because it will be so, that space station will not be crewed all the time. And so Canadarm will be the, like, you know, little C3PO that's left behind to fix stuff when there's no humans around. So it's going to be another level of engineering challenge for Canadians like Curtin and maybe others among yourselves when you graduate. So I think this is a really exciting prospect for Canada. But going back to that slide of perspective, our distant gaze is set on Mars. Mars is no kidding far. Mars is 1,000 times further than the moon. Going to Mars, right now, we can, you know, we've sent probes, but so we know how to get there, we know how to land, something that's you know, about a ton, or one of those rovers, but sending a human being with confidence that they will survive the trip, survive the stay, survive the return, we're not there yet. Right now, we're at a stage where going to Mars now is a bit like crossing the Atlantic on a raft. Yeah, maybe it will work, but we don't like to do things maybe. We like to have high confidence. So we're not ready yet. Going to Mars is going to require that we master completely the art of recycling resources, because we're not going there with bottles of water and you know, and packed and Mars bars. It's not going to happen like that. We need to recycle our air and our water completely, grow our own food. This is going to help us on Earth with our environmental challenges. We need to master the art of energy production and management. Another excuse to fix a good old Earth problem. We need to figure out the risks of cancer in space and all the psychological problems that are going to face. Another excuse to really make a giant leap in medical technology and understanding. And finally, this is going to be a truly international endeavor. So here's, if we needed one, yet another excuse to fix our quarrels down on Earth. So I think Mars is a beautiful project that can unite us all. It's an incredible dream. And I'll tell you something, the people who will go to Mars and the engineers who will design those spacecrafts, I'm pretty sure they're born already, but they're probably about your age. So this is a dream that's totally legitimate for you to have. I'm too old. I'll be looking for, maybe I'll be an instructor, you know, working mission control, but that is not for me. I'm going to leave you with this analogy as we all speak, you know, through satellites and computers and CCD cameras and all that jazz. This is the ancestor to all that. That's the Apollo Command Module Guidance Navigation Computer. It was the first microcomputer designed strictly for the, you know, the really ludicrous challenge of going to the moon at the time. Computers were the size of a building and they work well. And some people would say, well, that's it, we have computers. Who needs computers? They're that small anyway. What a waste of energy. But no, because of the difficulty, the extreme difficulty of the space environment, we really scratched our head harder to figure out the technical solution. We need a small compact computer. And after we had invented it, of course it bloomed and everybody wanted one. And eventually we're in a situation where we all have several computers, much smaller and much more powerful. So I like this story because I think again and again we see this with the theme of space exploration. Space is not a little extra adventure in our life. Space is central to human modern civilization. Space infrastructures are central to our lifestyle, to our economic development, and and it is an incredibly vibrant sector of our economy. It's part of our international relations. It is just something that should be on everybody's radar as just as essential as our roads and our embassies. It really serves similar purposes. So enough of those words. Ready for your questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saint-Jacques. You know, especially even though I work in the space industry, it's just such a pleasure to hear from somebody who actually has, you know, spaceflight experience and had firsthand has worked in that. So thank you very much for your time. While people are thinking of some questions, I do see some hands, but just to get the discussion rolling, I kind of had a question of my own. So the entirety of the time I've worked at MDA, I've been, as you mentioned, working on the Canadarm3 and Lunar Gateway project. And one of the biggest things we're noticing that compared to the design of SSRMS or Canadarm2 is that there's this just rapid rise of all these different players and rapid commercialization and privatization of the space industry, especially in the last few years. And space is no longer a playground solely for the super rich or the these big government agencies. And I just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts about seeing all these smaller players and private companies coming into the fold and participating in these large ambitious projects such as Canadarm3, Lunar Gateway, as well as human spaceflight as well.
I think it's just a natural trend of things. If you asked your great grandfather if you thought one day normal people could take a plane, they say you're crazy.
Right.
What are you talking about? If you ask your grandpa, I said, well, you got to be really rich, seriously rich, or be in the military to fly a plane. Nowadays, you can, well, not during the pandemic, it's more difficult, of course, but it has become a very well understood problem, and it has really given us wings. So I think spaceflight is reaching that point now. It's not that spaceflight has become easy, it's just that the engineering has become so much better understood that we welcome private sector industry and smaller players, as you said, to help shoulder the risk. And what that means is that the national space agencies can focus their resources and energies on the crazier, more risky projects of going back to the moon and eventually dreaming of going to Mars, and leaving things like low Earth orbit access, space station, cargo resupply to private companies. So I'm not saying that tomorrow we'll all be flying in space, but I think it's just a natural flow of any technology and because there is a great appetite for that perspective. I don't know anybody who's left without any emotions looking at photos of the Earth from space. I think for me anyway, those photos, the photo that's behind me of the Earthrise, when I was a child, I remember it completely changed my perspective of the world. Maybe I was 5 or 6 when I actually understood what I was looking at there. That this is the world where I am. So where's the photographer? Well, David, the photographer is standing on the moon. The moon is obviously very far away. You don't need to be a scientist to understand that. Just look up. So I think that sense of perspective is we all are hungry to. I mean, it's the same endeavor. The arts, science, exploration, it's the same. Is this attempt by the human mind to understand where we come from, where we're going, and what's the meaning of it all?
Yeah. No, it is incredible. I mean, even in the last few years, I have friends from university, engineering school who've gone on and are running their own space companies now. So it's definitely a very exciting world. We have some questions. So I will pass it on to, I think Alexander was first. So if Alexander, if you would like to unmute and ask your question.
Alexander Vikol, pleased to meet you, Dr. Saint-Jacques. First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for your presentation. It was eye-opening, most definitely. I guess I should start off with saying the premise that engineering, physics, and medicine, these are the 3 fields that I've kind of been contemplating going into over the past years. And my parents and I, we've been having this conversation for quite some time, and I just wanted to ask you, how are you able to do all 3? And on top of that, you're also an astronaut. So I would just like some insight on that.
Yeah, so, I think you can't look at your life as something that as a problem that must be solved or something that must be planned. You have to look at it as an experience you have to go through. And I always had the fantasy of space, really, but I never really had a particular project about it. I just knew it meant I had to stay in good shape. I had to be an explorer, develop my curiosity, and I had to develop my sense of responsibility and basically become a trustworthy person. And then professionally, what really matters is that you pick something that you like, because the only way to be excellent, of course, you need to work, but the only way you will ever find the resources in your heart and soul to be the best is if you love what you're doing. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So I chose engineering. My dad was an engineer. That's how I started out in life. And I was really just curious about how stuff worked. That's what it was all about. And then I became, I wanted to understand the universe and planets and astrophysics. And then I matured and I became more interested in people and societies and culture. And I thought, well, I felt the appeal of medicine, but there is no right path, because you shouldn't try to think of a path. I think that doesn't make sense. It's good to have a dream, and a crazy dream, is a very powerful motivator to get out of bed in the morning and do something and take one step towards that dream. You're not a failure if you don't achieve it. You're a failure if you don't even try, though, or if you refuse your dream just because it's too scary. I'm not going to try. I'm afraid of failing. That would be the biggest mistake. So I encourage you to have the craziest, biggest dream, but just not obsessed over achieving it. See a dream as like the North Star. The North Star, we use it for navigation. Nobody will ever get to the North Star, though. Nobody will ever get there, but it's a very good navigation tool. So that's what I see, the power of a dream. In terms of your career choices, you just got to have fun. If every step made sense when you took it, then that was the right path. And then you ricochet, you move around, things happen, just keep that. You just got to have, actually, on the opposite, rather than have a rigid plan all planned out, you need to be constantly looking around and keeping your eyes and ears open for opportunities, and not be afraid to change tack, change path, to kind of maximize, your sense of fulfillment. So, but it's difficult. I remember being your age, not really knowing what to do, just try to follow your heart. Your heart is a better advisor than your head for those things.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. I'll pass it over. We have some more questions. I'll pass it over to Matthew. If you could unmute and ask your question, please.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes. Well.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I was just wondering what drove you to be as accomplished as you are. I just found it inspiring just hearing about how much you've accomplished and how much you've done, going to the International Space Station, let alone leaving the stratosphere and just getting to the opportunity to see the Earth. It baffles me. What drove you to work so hard?
It didn't feel, it felt like hard work, but it felt like a lot of fun, mostly. And it was possible because my family supported me, because my friends helped me, because 1,000 people, just helped me, and I listened to their advice. We have a say among astronauts. If you ever see a turtle on top of a table, it didn't get there alone. So we're just standing on shoulders of giants. My motivation, really, I think if I have one ambition in life, it's the completely impossible dream of understanding everything. It's impossible, but I'm going to try. I am going to try. I'm the kind of person that when I don't understand something, it just itches. I gotta understand. I gotta ask more questions. It's maybe a character flaw, but it has really driven me to poke and poke and poke and just expand. I'm the kind of person who always wonders what's on the other side of that mountain. What's outside? What's out there? And I think that's a very healthy human trait to want to broaden your perspective. But it's just one step at a time. Just one step at a time.
Perfect. Thank you. And I've actually, I'm a big fan of space as well. And just watching the Mars rover touch down a few weeks ago here, or I guess almost a month ago, inspired me to actually, I'm sending up this Saturday a high altitude balloon. It's going to 30 kilometers. So not quite space, but near space. And it's taking a bunch of photos and videos and recording some weather data and then coming back down.
Very cool. Good luck finding the spacecraft. Could end up very far downrange. Wind is pretty stiff up there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Bye. Bye.
Awesome. Yeah. That message you said of having fun with your work is such a good lesson, and I know at MDA it's something we all try to aspire to. Work can get busy and stuff and complicated, but as long as we're having fun, that just makes everything easier.
Actually, if you're not having fun, you're doing something wrong.
For sure. Exactly. Yeah. Kevin, you're up. So if you can unmute and ask your question, please.
All right. Thank you so much for. Oh, you guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much, first off, for taking the opportunity to speak to us. I'm very into entrepreneurship. So just one of my important questions was just, what can we currently do as youth and as we get older to both improve the public and private sector of the space industry, in your opinion?
Well, no. First, I think just understanding the importance of it, of what we call our invisible infrastructure, and talking about it, because we are on the verge of, I think, a revolution and the public understanding and even the government understanding of what space can do for us. Space can do so much more. And in Canada in particular, we have everything we need to really maybe do 10 times more, 100 times more in space and with space. So I think you guys are all future leaders and you will influence a lot of people in your lives. That's maybe the step one. You can be our advocates for the importance of the coolness and the importance of space. We just, it's part. I'm a father of 3 young kids, and space is part of. It's a kind of, a space fair in Canada is the kind of country I want to give to my kids. A forward-looking country that's always at the edge of knowledge and of the kind of, even I would say, the philosophical power of understanding our place in space. I think that's what makes us wise. That's what is going to ultimately help us keep our planet livable and minimize war and make everybody's life healthier and longer. I really think space is part of the equation for all those issues.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll go on to our next question. Sorry, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Shu Patel?
You got it, Kirtan. Thank you.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Dr. Saint-Jacques. Like, I was ecstatic to find out that you'd be here and giving us a talk. And so my question for you, as a polymath, you've garnered a host of experience working as a physician, astrophysicist, engineer, and you alluded to some of the innovation that's occurring with space exploration. You touched on the cancer research side, the medical technology research that's going on. And you also alluded that the next person who builds the Mars spacecraft and travels there might be among us around our age. So can I ask you what you think is the next big thing for space exploration and space research?
Okay, so yeah, so life support equipment. It sounds boring, but right now on board space station, it kind of works, but some major part breaks every month. We need to get a spare part flown to us. So that's not acceptable on the way to Mars. So that's a big important part, just reliability of life support systems and autonomy of the crew. Right now, we're still working on a paradigm where, hundreds of super smart engineers on the ground are really controlling the spacecrafts, and the crews are there just for manual response to life-threatening emergencies, but otherwise rely on the ground. I think it's just not polished enough. spacecraft systems. So autonomy of the crew and life support of the crews, it's all about the crew, because for these distant missions, for the early space program, like initially they were just going around the Earth once. They basically held their breath. You just take someone healthy, cross your fingers, nothing's gonna go wrong. Then, I mean, the first mission, they didn't even think that he would need to pee. They provide him with a pee bag. So no food. So then the space shuttle, the moon, is like a 2 weeks super risky trip. And then again, take someone very healthy, cross your fingers. Same for a space shuttle mission. Space station is a bit more tricky there. We don't want, but nothing bad has happened, just very careful. Going to Mars, the risk that crew health is a major limitation to mission success is pretty high. So I think it all goes around the crew. And artificial intelligence also, like we're doing in Canada for Canadarm3, that's going to be part of it to kind of, that's going to be part of making the spacecrafts more easily manageable by a small crew.
Incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we have, I know Dr. Saint-Jacques has a commitment coming up, so I think we have time for 2 questions. So I'll pass it over to Arsh. If you could please unmute and ask your question.
Hi, yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for getting on this. I really love space, so it's a really awesome opportunity. But yeah, you mentioned that like you had a perspective change after coming from space. From like a philosophical standpoint, like kind of what was that? Because like space is just like unquantifiable thought, kind of like it's so big and vast, right? But like it's real. And like since you've been there, like what kind of was that like mindset or perspective change coming back to Earth?
So there's 2 aspects to it. First, so you've taken the plane before. You look down, hey, you're high above the ground. Going to space is a bit like that, except you're much higher. You're just much further, and you see the curve of the Earth. You kind of see with your own eyes that it's actually not getting a sphere. You look at the Earth, you're just very far. But what's most mind-boggling is when you turn around and you don't look at the Earth anymore. It's just nothing. Dark, quiet, deadly, filled with radiation, nothing. And so it's a very sobering view to see how exposed we are. I had this vision of humanity being like a mountain climber on a sheer ice cliff. In these photos, they kind of zoom out and you see the tiny, tiny climber with one rope. Just don't mess with your rope, please. Don't mess with your rope. It's your only rope. That sense of exposure was very sobering. The fact that, of course, there are wars because there's so few resources and there's so many of us. Most of the Earth is water or mountains or deserts, and then there's a few little places that are livable. And so we fight over the small resources. It's really a problem of organization. And at the same time, also, there's just this giant problem of the environmental responsibility. You look at the Earth floating in space, there is no tube with new air or with new water. It's all old stuff that's been recycled by the planet over millions of years, billions of years. So that's very sobering, the magnitude of the environmental and political challenges that we face if we want to be sustainable in the universe. So that's like kind of a downer. The upper was seeing that every day we work together. Nations who otherwise are actually fighting and bickering on the ground, we're working together in space and we accomplish incredible things. So I came back from Earth as a father, as a citizen, with those 2 thoughts in mind. Like the challenge is huge, but have absolutely no doubt we can do it. We're up to it. We just need to organize the best of our resources to accomplish that dream of surviving in space. We're all astronauts. We are all astronauts. This is the human condition. We're all living in deep space on Mothership Earth. But she's not there forever. We got to take care of her. we got to do some preventative maintenance here, because if we leave our spacecraft, that's it. So that's what I meant by a change of perspective. I'm still in space. It's not like I've been to space and come back. I'm still in space. I'm just sitting on the Earth at the bottom of a little layer of oxygen. on top of me, the atmosphere. Right? We're in space. We're in space. And at night, when the sky is not blue anymore and you see the stars, it's like, imagine a baby's crib. Some baby's crib, they have like a little veil over them, so they're not to disturb when they're sleeping. It's like someone takes that veil off and we can actually see where we are at night. We are in space.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you again. If we could ask one more question, just
Go
squeezing
ahead,
it
go
at
ahead.
the end.
We can go to the top of the hour, actually.
Oh, we can? Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good then. We have some more questions. Awesome. I'll pass it over to Zeal. I hope I have that name right.
Yes, thank you so much, Kitten. Hello, it's really nice to meet you, Dr. Saint-Jacques. My question kind of rooted from the fact that you are an engineer, an astrophysicist, and a physician as well, which is pretty general. And I've heard that astronauts need to be generalists because there's a lot that you need to take care of on your own, sometimes in one breath, as Chris Hadfield likes to say. And so I was wondering, as an astronaut candidate, there are tons of things that you have to learn that are well beyond what you, like the knowledge that you come in with. Which one of those things, if there were any, did you think that you wouldn't find interesting, but given the opportunity of learning it, you kind of got sucked in?
So it's a good question. The whole point of selecting astronauts is to select jacks of all trades. To go through this extensive selection process lasts about a year, and they test you on everything that you can test someone. And they're not looking for someone who is the best at everything. They're looking for people who do not fail any tests. And it's actually not an easy problem to find people who are generalists. And then when you get to NASA, of course, we all have a specialty. Some of us are pilots, physicians, scientists, blah, blah. Then you focus on the things that you are bad at. That is your responsibility as an astronaut. Focus. So I didn't know how to fly. Well, you can trust me. I learned how to fly. That was my focus. Learn how to fly. Because the other astronauts, some of them were top-level military test pilots. Well, they learned science while I was doing it. They didn't fly much. I was the one learning how to fly. Then there's so that's not just only for astronauts. Of course, the biggest challenge really was when I became a father, and you will all maybe face that choice eventually of having a family or not a family, or I realized that the only way that I can be at my best is if I am in balance. Take the analogy of a pilot. You've seen inside of a cockpit of a plane, there's like 1,000 dials there, right? And people talking on the radio, and there's just millions of things that want your attention. You can't geek out on any one of them. You got to keep them all under control. And every one of those dials has to be in the green. If one of them goes in the red, you're crashing. So life is a bit like that. If I want to be the best astronaut I can be, the solution is not to geek out and do only astronaut stuff. No, the solution is to keep a healthy lifestyle, eat well, sleep well, speak to my friends, speak to my mom, help my kids, love my wife, see my friends, have my hobbies. You got to do a bit of everything so that you are in balance. That's when you are at your best, and that's when you perform best at everything. So learning that sometimes frustrating art of just spreading your attention and prioritizing correctly, that was a very big challenge because I love this astronaut stuff so much. Could definitely geek out and do only that. Divorce, not see my friends, and just study astronaut stuff. That would be the wrong way to do it. I would be a very bad astronaut at the end of the day. So that was the big, very sobering lesson. You'll all reach a point in your life and career where maybe now you're the kind of people for whom it's been easy so far. Well, therefore, your responsibility is to aim higher, aim higher, aim higher, aim higher until you struggle. Then you're at your spot. That's when you're gonna bloom and fulfill your destiny.
Thank you so much.
And I can tell you, there hasn't been a day at my experience as an astronaut where I haven't met my limits and felt sweaty palms and going, I suck, you know. And that's why I know I'm in the right spot, because I'm pushing myself.
Cool, thank you. We have a lot of questions now. Michael, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Saint-Jacques. I know you talked about like coming back to Earth and you're in like not the best shape after space. With like all the new technologies, do you know like how will the new technology support astronaut health in space or like going on mission like to Mars?
Yeah, so that's a really intense area of current research, because when you land on Mars, there's not going to be like 10 doctors and paramedics to cart you around. You're going to be on your own. So how do we make sure crew members? We don't know. How do we make sure they don't die of cancer on the way, and then they don't die because something breaks in the life support system, and that they need to be able to work and walk and be strong enough there, and then when they come back to Earth, same thing. So this is really an area of active research, and we don't know how to do it yet. We don't know how to do it yet. We kind of know a little bit, but it still remains a very high risk, a big mission risk. There's a lot of variability among the crew members. There are some people for whom it's easier, or longer, or shorter. So this is a very poorly understood problem. And of course, we have not evolved doing this. So our body's not really optimized for it. This is just a kind of a random chance, basically, depending on your individual genetics, how you react to the environment of space and to coming back to Earth. But certainly the art of monitoring health remotely, the art of customizing healthcare to individual patients, the art of training medical people on their way. All these technologies that we need for deep space healthcare are going to be very helpful on Earth. I can tell you, from being a former rural physician, I would love to have had these things in my little village in the Arctic. Same problem, so therefore similar solutions probably.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. We'll go to Raven next.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I just want to thank you as well for your presentation. And I think I like how you mentioned your kind of undying desire for more understanding. And I think that's one thing lots of us in this call can relate to. I mean, I myself wrote a few philosophy papers in literature about, that undying need. But if I were to have two questions, one little one is, first one would be, what materials your wedding ring made out of? Looks pretty interesting.
Yes, that's a walrus tusk made by one of my patients in a little, but it's a traditional thing Inuits wear. So it was our engagement ring actually, but we couldn't top it when we got married, so we kept it as our wedding ring. It says her name in the Inuktitut, and hers says my name in Inuktitut.
That's awesome. Yeah, and if I were just to have one other question, I'm just wondering where you see yourself in the future of space travel, whether as a mentor, doing more work in those areas, because like we were talking about the philosophy, I doubt that you are really ever the same once you see that perspective, like Earthrise on the moon. So I'm just wondering where you see yourself in the future of space travel.
Well, so I mean, I'm still an active astronaut, but I'm kind of at the back of the queue now. There's 3 rookies that have not been to space yet, so they have to go before me. So my role, I'm going back to the actual job of an astronaut, which is to support other crew members' mission. Imagine if Air Canada pilots spent all their career working at the airport in various departments, and then once or twice flew a plane. That's kind of the career of an astronaut. So I'm back to my real life, my real job now, which is support. I'm a instructor now because I'm certified. I have experience. I'm on committees, mulling over future projects, advising. I do a lot of this public speaking, so that's kind of my role within the space program. If I get called upon to go back, for sure I will. That's the kind of that's what all astronauts aspire to, but you know, your real job is to provide the crew perspective to the space program. So that's where I stand now. And I think I like to influence decision makers and leaders to make them, as I said earlier, understand the value of space for Canada, how it is a critical part of the infrastructure of the modern Canada forward-looking Canada we all dream of.
Awesome. Thank you again. I think we can squeeze in a few more questions here. I'll pass it over to Peter.
Hi. I was wondering if you could comment on what do you know and what are your thoughts on the recent announcement that Canada will be sending a rover to the moon in addition to working on Canadarm3?
Yeah, so I think, we can all be proud of that. The fact that Canadarm for sure is in the books and people are working on it. The rover is just been announced. I think we can all be proud of that. I think it's a great opportunity to kind of bring together a lot of Canadian strengths about electrical propulsion, about autonomy and artificial intelligence, maybe mining, and what better country than Canada to mull over the issue of mining in a austere place. And so I think this is I think it's just good news. It just makes sense. I think it just makes sense. And that's really the job of the space agency, is to figure out projects that are interesting for the purpose of space exploration, but also match other government priorities. And then it becomes a win-win proposition, and that ensures the survival of the program, because it's in everybody's interest to continue. And we've been very successful so far.
Awesome. Thank you. Do we have time for
Yeah,
one
go
more
ahead.
question? Yeah. Okay.
I see two hands there. We might as well empty the bucket.
Yeah. There's. I have like 7 people on my list.
Okay.
But we'll go to Arjun next.
Hi, Dr. Saint-Jacques. I just wanted to thank you again for your time. My question kind of relates to the sustainability stuff you were talking about a bit earlier, mostly in regards to space waste. I know a couple weeks ago, there was I think it was one of the stages of the Chinese launch rocket that ended up having uncontrolled reentry. So what's your opinion on the responsibility of launch-capable nations in terms of keeping Earth orbit clean, and how worried are you about this topic?
So I mean, it's a Damocles sword hanging over the head of every astronaut. Space junk. Big picture. The story here is way back when, in the 70s, when they were starting to launch satellites, they weren't very careful in their design, and they were designing satellites that would die on orbit, and then you're unable to control them or do anything smart with them, and they just stay there. And eventually they collide into each other, and then shrapnel everywhere. Nowadays, there are international agreements that yes, when you launch spacecraft, you should keep enough resources on board to basically ditch them in the ocean at the end of life, or do something smart, deorbit them in a responsible way, in a controlled manner. But right now we are tracking about 30,000 pieces of space junk that are a potential threat to other satellites or to the space station. Anything that's bigger than about an inch that can be seen on radar. But there's about 100 times more that's a bit smaller that we can't see, that's still just as dangerous. So every month or so, there's like an alarm on board the space station, like, like a maybe 10% chance of a hit. And then as time goes by, the percent risk goes up or down. If it keeps going up, we put your spacesuit on, go in your Soyuz, power it up, close the hatch, and then keep your finger on the bye-bye button. Then the thing flies by, we're okay. We can kind of hop over space junk. We can try to avert it because we don't really know where they are. It's tempting to just not move and wait. So it is a threat. And then there's meteorites, other space junk, natural space junk, just rocks hurtling through space. That's really just a lottery. When you're on Earth and you see a shooting star, you can, hey, this is my lucky day, I'm going to make a wish. When you're in space and you see a shooting star, you go, whew, that was a close call.
Yeah,
Awesome, thank you.
I know at work, one of the big things is that Canadarm2 just took a hit from a micrometeorite. So yeah.
Oh, the
definitely.
station is peppered with small impacts, like mosquitoes on the windscreen of your car after riding on it.
Right.
There's
For
just
sure.
millions of tiny craters from pieces of dust that are hitting it.
Wow.
Well, the cracks in the windows.
Oh, really?
Sobering.
Wow.
Yeah, it's sobering. Yeah.
Holy. Anyway, unfortunately, we do have to call that in terms of questions. I know how valuable your time is, Dr. Saint-Jacques, so thank you very much and for this time, and apologies for keeping you a little bit over. I think, I speak for everybody here that it was just such an insightful presentation. I know I'm going to go log in back to work and be the envy of the entire company for a day. So thank you very much. And thank you for your presentation. And I'll pass it over to David for some last closing comments.
Yeah, thank you, Curtin, for moderating, and to Dr. Saint-Jacques for such a insightful session for our Schulich leaders, exclusive to our Schulich leaders. We're really, really pleased with how many of you were able to take this in, and we'll share the recording with the rest of the Schulich Leader Network this week. We hope everyone has a great week, is keeping safe, and we'll see you all again very soon. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the future. Thank you, guys. You are our future.
Merci beaucoup.
Take it easy. Take it easy. Enjoy whatever you're doing. This is a beautiful phase of your life. Maybe you feel like you're in the dark a little bit, but it's okay. You'll miss this time.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Bye. Signing off.
Thank you.
Thank you.